Can I help you?
I'm sorry to come like this. I didn't know where else to go.
It's okay. Come in.
With swollen eyes and trembling hands. The girl looked broken, the kind of broken that made decent people step aside and let you in. Without thinking twice, the wife ushered her into the living room, offered her a seat, and fetched water. Compassion was instinctive to her. She had always believed kindness was never wasted, even when it hurt. She didn't yet know this kindness would be the sharpest knife. The girl spoke between sobs, apologizing for disturbing a stranger. She said she had nowhere else to go, that the man she loved had lied to her, promised her a future, then disappeared. Her voice cracked as she spoke of betrayal, of nights spent waiting for calls that never came. The wife listened closely, nodding, offering soft words. Every sentence sounded familiar, but she pushed the thought aside. Many men betrayed women. This wasn't unique. Or so she told herself. From the doorway leading to the kitchen, her husband appeared. He paused, observing the scene, the crying stranger, his wife leaning forward in concern. His eyes flickered with something unreadable before his lips curved upward. He didn't ask questions. He didn't interrupt. He simply smiled and walked away. The wife noticed that smile, brief but deliberate. Something cold brushed her spine, though she couldn't yet explain why. That smile lingered longer than the knock itself. The wife moved closer, offering her shoulder when the girl's crying worsened. The girl clung to her as if drowning, whispering apologies and heartbreak into her ear. The wife held her steady, rubbing her back gently, murmuring reassurances. She had done this before, for friends, cousins, even strangers. Comfort was second nature to her. Still, a strange weight pressed against her chest. It felt personal in a way she couldn't yet name, like grief knocking from the inside. The girl began to talk more freely, her story unfolding in detail. She spoke of secret dinners, hurried phone calls, and stolen weekends. She mentioned how the man always checked his watch, always rushed home early, always claimed obligations he couldn't explain. The wife's fingers stiffened slightly, but her face remained calm. Her own husband behaved the same way. She told herself coincidence was common. Still, her heart began to beat louder. Across the room, the husband returned, leaning against the wall. He watched the women closely, his gaze lingering on the girl's tears and his wife's patience. The smile returned, slow and confident. He sipped his drink as though enjoying quiet entertainment. The wife glanced up and caught his expression. He didn't look surprised. He looked pleased. That was when the unease hardened into something heavier, something that refused to be ignored. The girl wiped her face and continued, apologizing again for crying so much. She mentioned a bracelet the man had given her, describing it with care. The wife's breath caught for a fraction of a second. She recognized the description instantly. She had seen that bracelet before, claimed to be a gift for a colleague's birthday. Her hand tightened unconsciously around the girl's shoulder, though her voice remained steady and warm. The girl spoke of his habits next, how he hated loud music in the morning, how he always drank tea before coffee, how he never slept without setting 2 alarms. Each detail landed with painful precision. These were not generic traits. These were intimate truths. The wife felt the room shrink, as if the walls were closing in slowly. She nodded, murmured sympathy, and kept listening, even as something inside her cracked quietly. The husband shifted his weight, clearly relaxed. He met his wife's eyes briefly and lifted his glass slightly, as though sharing a private joke. That gesture said everything. There was no fear in him, no guilt, only confidence. The wife finally understood then that this was not a misunderstanding waiting to be cleared. It was a betrayal unfolding in real time, and he was enjoying every second of it. When the girl finally paused, exhausted from crying, the wife gently pulled back and handed her a tissue. She told her she was strong, that heartbreak didn't define her future. The words sounded kind, even sincere, but they were spoken through clenched resolve. The wife no longer needed confirmation. The truth was sitting in her living room, breathing, shaking, confessing, without knowing it was confessing. The girl thanked her repeatedly, calling her an angel, saying she didn't know what she would have done without her. The wife smiled faintly. It was strange how life twisted roles so cruelly. The woman who had been betrayed was now the one offering comfort. The woman who had helped destroy a marriage was now seeking refuge inside it. And the man responsible for both stood comfortably nearby, untouched. That night, after the girl left, the house felt different. He climbed into bed beside his wife and slept easily, his breathing deep and satisfied. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every glance, every smile. She didn't cry. She didn't move. In that silence, she made a choice. She would not confront him yet. She would watch, learn, and prepare. Morning came as usual. Breakfast was made, pleasantries exchanged, routines followed. The husband kissed her cheek and left for work, confident and careless. He believed the danger had passed. He believed silence meant ignorance. The wife stood by the window long after he left, watching his car disappear. Her face was calm, but her mind was sharp, alert, awake in a way it had never been before. Later that day, the girl sent a message thanking her again for the kindness. The wife replied politely, offering support if needed. Her words were measured, intentional. She was building a bridge, not burning one. Every conversation now had purpose. Every gesture was part of a quiet strategy. She was no longer reacting. She was observing, collecting, waiting. That evening, as she set the table alone, she felt something unexpected, clarity. Betrayal had stripped away illusion, leaving behind resolve. The man who once smiled so confidently no longer frightened her. He had underestimated her, and that would be his greatest mistake. The woman who once offered her shoulder freely was gone. In her place stood someone steady, patient, and ready. The wife began to notice everything. The way her husband guarded his phone, turning the screen down whenever a message came in. The way he laughed more easily, moved lighter, as though carrying a secret that fed his ego. She responded with normalcy, warm meals, polite conversation, gentle smiles. Nothing in her behavior warned him. Inside, however, she was fully awake. Watching him felt like studying a stranger who wore her husband's face too well. She replayed the girl's words in her mind, lining them up against his routines. Late meetings, sudden errands, unnecessary arguments created just to leave the house. Each pattern clicked into place. The pain didn't explode the way movies promised. It settled quietly, heavy and steady, like a stone in her chest. It hurt, yes, but clarity dulled the chaos. She no longer questioned herself. Doubt had left the room completely. At night, lying beside him, she studied his sleeping face. This was the man who had sworn loyalty without hesitation. The man who now lived comfortably inside his lies. She wondered how long he believed this could last. Men like him always believed they were smarter than consequence. She closed her eyes and decided something firmly. She would let him keep believing that for now. The girl reached out again 2 days later. A simple message asking how the wife was doing. The wife replied kindly, carefully choosing her words. She did not accuse. She did not hint. She offered reassurance and availability. The girl responded almost immediately, relieved. She spoke of confusion, of still loving the man despite everything. The wife read each message slowly, her emotions locked behind composure. In their conversations, the girl revealed more without realizing it. Times, places, promises repeated. The wife learned how long the affair had lasted. Longer than she had hoped. Shorter than she feared. Still devastating. Each truth settled into her quietly. She did not lash out. She documented mentally, storing every detail. If silence was a weapon, information was ammunition. Her husband noticed her calm and mistook it for contentment. He grew relaxed, careless even. He talked more freely about work, about stress, about needing space. She listened without interruption. The distance between them grew, but only he believed it was safe. He didn't realize that the wife was no longer waiting to be chosen. She was preparing to choose herself. One afternoon, the wife sat alone and revisited memories she once cherished. Their wedding day, the vows spoken confidently, the promises that had felt unbreakable. She now saw those moments differently, not as lies, but as beginnings that had been taken for granted. Somewhere along the way, effort had faded, replaced by entitlement. Love had been replaced by convenience. She recognized the small moments she had ignored. His impatience, his defensiveness, the way he dismissed her concerns as overthinking. She had tried to hold the marriage together with understanding and patience. Now she understood something painful. Loyalty without boundaries invites disrespect. That realization hurt more than the affair itself. Still, she didn't hate him. That surprised her. What she felt was distance, clean and cold. Love doesn't always turn into rage. Sometimes it simply leaves. She realized she was grieving not the man he was, but the future she believed they were building. That future no longer belonged to him. It belonged to her alone now. The husband began staying out later, no longer bothering with elaborate excuses. He assumed her silence meant acceptance or ignorance. He underestimated how much she observed. She noticed his confidence growing, his lies thinning. He had grown comfortable balancing two worlds, convinced neither would collide. Men like him always forgot one thing: truth has gravity. Eventually, it falls. One evening, he joked casually about women being dramatic. The wife smiled faintly and said nothing. Inside, something hardened permanently. He spoke as though consequences were abstract ideas meant for other men. His arrogance was no longer subtle. It was loud, careless, and insulting in its confidence. Later that night, the girl sent another message, distressed. The man had canceled plans again. The wife read it and felt something shift, not pity, not jealousy. Understanding. Both women had been managed, delayed, and deceived. The difference was this: one was still hoping. The other was done hoping entirely. The wife began organizing her life quietly. She reviewed finances, documents, routines. Nothing dramatic. Nothing suspicious. Preparation didn't require panic. It required patience. She moved carefully, protecting herself without alerting him. Every step she took was silent, deliberate, and irreversible. Her conversations with the girl grew more intentional. She asked gentle questions, framed as concern. The girl answered freely, trusting the wife completely. Trust was a fragile thing. The wife didn't abuse it, but she didn't waste it either. She knew when the truth finally surfaced, it would wound everyone involved. She intended to survive it whole. One night, standing alone in the kitchen, she looked at her reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. Stronger, calmer, unafraid. Betrayal had stripped her down to something raw and unshakable. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. The man who once smiled so confidently had already lost her. He just didn't know it yet. The girl arrived again, this time without tears at first. She looked tired, worn down by waiting and hoping. The wife welcomed her with the same calm hospitality as before. Tea was poured. Seats were offered. Nothing in the room suggested tension. Yet something had changed. The wife was no longer absorbing pain. She was observing it. The girl talked, filling the silence with explanations that no longer needed prompting. As the girl spoke, frustration replaced sorrow. She admitted she felt invisible, like a secret kept only when convenient. She wondered aloud if the man truly loved her. The wife listened carefully, nodding slowly. Each doubt the girl voiced confirmed what the wife already knew. Love that hides is rarely love. It is often selfishness dressed up as romance. When the husband entered the room, the girl stiffened. The wife noticed. The man greeted them casually, confident as ever. His eyes flicked between them, measuring reactions. He still believed he controlled the narrative. The wife met his gaze evenly. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar, a flicker of uncertainty he couldn't name. The wife became exceptionally calm after that visit. Her kindness deepened, her patience sharpened. To anyone watching, she appeared unbothered, perhaps even detached. That was the mask. Behind it, every emotion had been organized and restrained. She no longer reacted instinctively. She responded strategically. Her husband mistook her quietness for resignation. He grew careless with his words, speaking openly about stress and dissatisfaction, framing himself as misunderstood. She listened without interruption, never challenging him. His confidence expanded in the absence of resistance. He believed silence meant surrender. He had never been more wrong. The girl, meanwhile, began to confide more deeply. Her messages grew longer, her doubts heavier. She asked the wife for advice without realizing the irony of the situation. The wife gave neutral guidance, never pushing, never protecting the man. Slowly, subtly, she allowed the girl to see the truth herself. Truth revealed gently is harder to deny. The girl started asking questions she hadn't before. About marriage. About loyalty. About how the wife managed to stay so composed. The questions carried insecurity beneath them. Comparison had begun, though unspoken. The wife answered honestly, but briefly, refusing to compete. She had no interest in proving worth to someone standing in her home by accident. Jealousy crept into the girl's tone without warning. She wondered what it was like being chosen publicly, acknowledged openly. The wife felt a quiet sadness then, not for herself, but for the girl. Being hidden had taken its toll. The man had promised both women different versions of himself, never intending to fully show up for either. That evening, the husband sensed tension and reacted poorly. He grew defensive, snapping over small things. The wife remained calm, which unsettled him more than anger would have. He was losing control of the emotional environment. He didn't yet understand why, but he felt it slipping. The husband made a mistake born of arrogance. He assumed the girl would remain compliant, patient, grateful. Instead, she demanded clarity. He dismissed her concerns, promising later conversations he never intended to have. That dismissal pushed her closer to the wife, seeking grounding and truth. The girl revealed something new, a plan he had mentioned, a future he described vaguely, always postponed. The wife listened and confirmed gently that promises without timelines were manipulation. The girl fell silent. Reality settled in slowly, painfully. For the first time, she questioned whether she had been chosen at all. At home, the husband sensed the shift but misread it. He blamed mood, stress, timing. He still believed his charm would smooth everything over. The wife watched him pace, complain, and scheme. She realized this was the turning point. The lies were no longer sustainable. All that remained was timing. The wife reviewed everything she had learned. Every detail aligned neatly now. There were no missing pieces. No unanswered questions. Clarity had replaced confusion completely. She felt steady, grounded, and strangely peaceful. Whatever came next would not break her. She had already survived the worst part, the knowing. The girl sent one final message that night, short and uncertain. She said she needed space to think. The wife replied with understanding and nothing more. There was no triumph in her heart, only resolution. Both women were stepping out of the man's shadow in different ways. As the husband slept that night, unaware of how close consequence was, the wife stared at the ceiling and exhaled slowly. She was no longer reacting to betrayal. She was concluding it. The smile he once wore so confidently was about to disappear. And when it did, there would be no drama, only truth. The wife chose an ordinary evening. Dinner was simple. The house was calm. Nothing warned him. She waited until he relaxed, until his guard dropped completely. Then she spoke, not accusing, not angry. She mentioned the girl's name softly, as though discussing weather. The husband froze. Just for a second. That was enough. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand explanations. She stated facts she could not possibly know unless he had been exposed. Dates, places, promises. Each sentence stripped his confidence piece by piece. He tried to interrupt, to laugh, to minimize. She stopped him with a look, steady and final. For the first time, he didn't smile. He saw something in her eyes he hadn't expected. Absence. No pleading. No fear. Just clarity. That silence frightened him more than shouting ever could. He realized too late that this conversation was not a negotiation. It was a conclusion. The girl learned the truth the following day, not through confrontation, but through confirmation. She saw the evidence laid out gently, without accusation. Messages aligned. Lies collapsed. The man who once seemed so certain suddenly appeared small and predictable. The illusion shattered quietly, leaving shame in its place. She cried, not the dramatic sobs from before, but slow, heavy tears of understanding. She apologized repeatedly, though the wife didn't ask for it. The apology wasn't really for the wife. It was for herself, for ignoring instincts, for accepting secrecy as love. The wife listened without judgment. There was no victory in this moment, only finality. The girl left lighter, but wounded, carrying lessons she would never forget. When the door closed, the wife felt no triumph, only relief. The triangle was broken. Each woman now stood on her own ground. The husband unraveled quickly once control slipped away. He pleaded, argued, blamed stress, blamed temptation, blamed misunderstanding. The wife listened once. Then she stopped listening. His words no longer mattered. They arrived too late to change anything. He lost access first, to her trust, then to her presence. Conversations ended quickly. Meals were separate. Silence filled spaces where manipulation once lived. He felt invisible in his own home. That was new. That was unbearable. The smile that once came so easily never returned. He watched her move calmly through days without him, and panic crept in. Not because he loved her deeply, but because he realized he had lost something irreplaceable. Respect cannot be begged back. He learned that too late. The wife left without spectacle. No shouting. No announcements. Just departure. She packed what mattered and closed the door behind her with steady hands. She did not look back. Closure doesn't always need conversation. Sometimes distance is the loudest answer. In her new space, she breathed differently, freely. The quiet felt earned. Pain still existed, but it no longer controlled her. She slept better, thought clearer. She had not been destroyed by betrayal. She had been clarified by it. She understood now that dignity isn't about staying or leaving. It's about choosing yourself without apology. The life ahead felt uncertain, but honest. And honesty, she realized, was peace. Months passed. The man lived with regret that no apology could fix. The girl rebuilt herself slowly, wiser and guarded. And the wife, she thrived quietly. Not loudly, not for anyone's approval, just steadily. Sometimes she remembered the moment the girl cried on her shoulder. The irony no longer stung. It simply reminded her how far she had come. Compassion had not been weakness. It had been proof of her character. The smile that once haunted her memory no longer mattered. It belonged to a version of him that no longer had access to her life. And in that realization, she found something better than revenge, freedom. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and put on post notifications.